Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and we are in the Philosophical Midwifery book again today. That's why we're at a lovely garden in a picture frame, and that's why these words are floating in the air above us here. So let's recap where we are in the text. We're in chapter 2 and my lights are very orange. Let's see if I can change that a little bit. We're in chapter 2. And let's review what we've done so far. We've been covering the nature of the pathologos, and now we are on the condition of the pathologos and the transmission of the pathologos. Right? So let's jump into the text and review those sections before we go on. Here is our scroll. The nature of the pathologos, a monad-like quality. So a monad or a oneness is made up of parts. So there are parts that come together to form a greater whole. That's the monad. So we've been talking about those parts being certain kinds of pathologos beliefs or individual pathologos and problems, the problems that we have. Relates to our self-image. We've been talking about how our lives are a dialectic of the pathologos. Our life and our dreams, as we've been talking about in the chat today, and our fantasies and daydreams are successive iterations of the consequences that follow our pathologos belief. In other words, we've been talking about the origin of a false belief about ourself and reality, something negative, balloons, our unworthiness of a self or the lack of integrity, intelligibility, and care and goodness of reality. All right, a certain false belief about ourself and reality that we didn't get taught but learned because of certain conditions that were set up so that we would come to that conclusion that we are unaware of because it wasn't put into words. We've been carrying it with us, and our life can be understood as simply a playing out of the implications of that. What are the consequences that follow this kind of a self, this kind of a reality? And as a result, we are kind of doing a kind of pseudo improvement. I call it pseudo because we're not really improving. We're not getting anywhere new. We're stuck. We're just confirming what we already unsuspectingly believe. But we are refining it. We're refining that false belief and our identification with it as our image of ourselves, as a mask that we hold, and particular our image of ourselves that results from those things. So we have a word, or it's called a morphology, a kind of form but in words, that we call a pathologos, something that we have carrying a conclusion about ourself and reality, a negative one. That's a kind of monad made up of parts. This is the cause of our problems, the cause of our fate, being trapped in our problems. But our lives are the playing out of that, and you could say it's the opposite of virtue. Because in virtue, we put into practice what we learn when we read Socrates. We're reading in this channel, we read the Platonic texts because it gives us what we need to move from ignorance, not knowing, into through beliefs, beyond beliefs, into understanding and knowing. In other words, most people are kind of stuck with only being able to think in terms of belief. And there are various kinds of belief, of course. Prejudice, false beliefs, scientific beliefs, and so on. But in philosophy, we want to go beyond belief into something called dianoia, understanding. We call it in English, but it's understanding of being. That's what makes it in metaphysics, being. Okay, so we learn it. This is why we read. We have what we need to exercise our mind on the logos to develop understanding, which is our gateway to ousia or nous, going beyond understanding to experience, the enlightenment experience. And then there are even ways of functioning or cognitive faculties beyond even that, like phronesis. Okay, this is what we learn, but we're not learning if we are not also putting it into practice. So that's where the virtues come in, putting it into practice. We can use the dialectic to understand that by saying definition isn't enough. We have to also be demonstrating. Definition and demonstration are both needed. The demonstration or the virtues, integrating what we're learning, proving what we're learning in direct experience. That's the movement from understanding to nous, dianoia to nous, but also integrating it, making it a way of being, a way of being of self, which is a kind of what Socrates calls an education and nurture that we can take with us beyond even this lifetime, and therefore what we are here for. So what we might call traditionally the meaning of life. Simple, we know the meaning of life. Hooray. So what? Well, so we can do it. And maybe if you have some friends who are open-minded and also want to know what the meaning of life is, you can share this understanding with them over a lovely cup of coffee. Cup of coffee. So we have some coffee when I say that. We have fun here. All right, so if that's the logos or the positive side, that's the philosophy side. The dialectic or dialectic being the structure of understanding, the dialectic put into our way of being or used to nurture our way of being of self, so too does it have an opposite. Remember, as we read, everything we learn in one, we can apply to the other. Everything we learn in philosophy, we can apply to midwifery in its negative form, and vice versa. So our life is a playing out of the same dialectic, only it isn't on what is true, it's on what is false. An unsuspected false belief about self and reality that we are integrating through successive refinements in the various different experiences we have in our lifetime. We are a walking dialectic. So how does that manifest? Well, we talked about this being let's see if we can see it in the text. There is a interconnectedness of our problems, various intensities as we play out those dramas, linked together with a network of beliefs that we can therefore refine through these instances, the pathologos with more precision or clarity. Or if we're in this game, midwifery, we're refining our understanding through successive instances of reflecting on our problems. Philosophical midwifery. We have a choice. But if we don't play the game, we're not refining our understanding. We are, like most people at this point of history, they are refining their pathologos. Okay, the unsuspected underlying false belief has their specific content, which is the bridge of meaning. This is the thread. It's the thread that holds it all together. There is a meaning, there is a wholeness, even in what appears to be problems, what appears to be tragic, what appears to be what is our problems, which is our negative experiences, which might seem irrational. Actually, there's a bridge or thread of meaning, which is the content of our pathologos that we don't know yet. What does that mean? That means we have to look for patterns within our problems so we can discover, like solving a Sherlock Holmes mystery. That's what Pierre would often say. What that false belief must be. We have to bring it into the light. We have to discover it. We have to solve who was, like a Scooby-Doo mystery. Who was the ghost after all? It was actually this. What did I believe about self and reality this whole time I've been alive? Oh, it must have been this. How do I figure it out? By finding the common unifying thread that's a kind of bridge of meaning between all of the different instances, the successive refinements, the experiences we have, in our problems, in our relationships, in our daydreams, fantasies, night dreams, and so on and so on. Find the common thread. Okay? So, and we are shaping the pathologos through successive refinements. This forms the basic image of ourselves. So while the pathologos is the definition, the demonstration comes down to an image of yourself, which involves a kind of mask or a persona, a characteristic way of relating to ourselves and others. What kind of a person are you? Are you timid? Are you a wallflower? Would you say, I've got ADHD? Or I'm a manic pixie type person? I'm an internet troll? I'm a... What kind of way do you relate to self and the world? What's your mannerisms? What feels natural? Or what have you gotten used to doing? Ask this question. When you meet somebody new, you start a new class or you go to a new place and meet some new people, how do you introduce yourself? Do you belittle yourself to be polite or to make others uncomfortable, even though that's irrational? To make other people comfortable by putting yourself down, as though that makes any sense. Do you make a joke? Do you undermine what you're doing meaningfully, like philosophical midwifery, and just make jokes? Do you assert yourself by picking on the tallest person in that new friend group and beating them up to establish yourself as the alpha? When somebody shares something meaningful, do you shoot it down to do a similar kind of thing? Right? This is what we're looking for. What's our mask, our persona that we are relating to? It's not us, remember. That is a characteristic way that we have of relating to ourselves in the world. That forms as a whole, a kind of monad, an image of yourself, which includes all of that. So it's kind of like, if you wanted to think of how, as we read, we want to look for lots of different ways of seeing the dialectic, because dialectic is really the key. So we talked about Sherlock Holmes. If you've ever watched the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes series, which is amazing, by the way, I really loved it. He has a certain power that allows him to solve puzzles at an extraordinary rate that makes him a kind of superhero within his universe. It makes Sherlock Holmes exceptional among other human beings. It's a special power that makes him this great detective. For us, it's right, that's the movie. Discombobulate, that's the movie. The series, the British series, is really good. It's got Bilbo Baggins and Doctor Strange as the two main characters. Anyway, what we have as our superpower or ability is the dialectic. That's how we look for problems. That's how we discover mysteries. And it's how we solve mysteries. It's both. Isn't that wonderful? Kind of like how philosophy is the progression towards the truth of self and reality and the various different ways of understanding, knowing, and integrating it, the different cognitive functions, through the dialectic. And midwifery is the same thing, the dialectic applied to what's false about self and reality. And our cognitive functions don't go beyond belief to dianoia, understanding, to nous, kind of understanding, of course. It's not regular understanding, it's understanding reality. So beyond belief to dianoia, and beyond that to nous, a kind of knowing, and wisdom, Sophia, phronesis. No, we go down. We start with a false belief and we develop a mask, a persona, kind of crappy mannerisms that we are attached to, ways of relating to ourselves in the world that limit us. We go down. But it's the dialectic, midwifery, and philosophy. So too, we can use that superpower here, as our method, to discover new questions and gain new insights. So one way of looking for a dialectic is seeing, well, what's the two? What's the self and other? Dialectic at its core is two. Two things rubbing up against each other to gain insight on something else, a new thing. So self and other is the two terms we use. Well, what are the, in its use, in its functioning, Socrates talks with an interlocutor. There's Socrates, the dialectician, and a friend he's talking to, an interlocutor. Two people in relationship. So you could say we, as a walking dialectic ourselves, on our problems, on what's crappy about our experience, we are, you could say the one term is the unsuspected false belief about ourselves and reality, and the other thing is our self-image. This is like Socrates leading the conversation, and the interlocutor is our development of a false image about ourselves which will match it. Just like in a dialectic, the interlocutor is trying to themselves match Socrates, follow Socrates to where he is at. Match his level of mind, his level of vision, his level of understanding. That's how we learn. So we're doing the same thing, only it's not Socrates, but the false belief about self and reality. And the interlocutor is our image of ourselves. That's the game we're in. Now, you might not like that, or you might not like that we can understand human life in such a simple way that's universally applicable. No need for clans or family divisions or national divisions or any of this in-group, out-group division. Every human being is the same. We are all a monad. In what way? What makes us a oneness? What's the greater whole? Well, we are all simply a dialectic between our pathologos and our self-image. Every moment of our life, we are through successive refinements, expressing and making it more with greater precision and clarity that connection, which of course is tragic, because it's the cause of all of our problems. If you can see there's a way out of it, maybe you can turn that tragedy on its head into a comedy. Isn't it funny how tragic our lives are? All our effort, all our energy, all our planning, all the work we've been doing is to refine the very thing we're trying to get out of. You do things, you have effort, you achieve things, you get a job, or you improve yourself so that you can become better and escape your problems, but everything you're doing is just to get more entrenched into your problems. Isn't that hilarious? If you realize we can stop doing it. If you think there's no way out, then it would seem like a tragedy, of course. We can turn it into a comedy and see the irony of it, the comedic irony of it, if we're in this game. In other words, we can laugh at a baby or a dog or a puppy doing something silly. Or like you look at a duck and it's very serious about its little duck activities. We find that adorable and funny. But to a duck, it's very serious getting the piece of bread or whatever the duck is doing, or the baby is doing, or whatever. Or two toddlers talking to each other very seriously. It's not serious to us. Because we realize that what they're doing isn't the whole of it. It's not the entire reality of it. What they're doing is a bit silly. Toddlers arguing over what's the best dinosaur, or whatever it is. To them, very serious. That's what makes it funny to us. Just as, how serious is it, the tragedy and the suffering that all human beings experience, simply because we are all a walking dialectic between our pathologos and our self-image. Developing everything we do, even though we're seeking the good, the irony is we're actually doing the opposite. Which is silly and funny to someone who can see that, oh yeah, you can step out of it. You don't have to get wrapped up in talking about dinosaurs or playing Transformers. If that's all you think you can do, yes, tragedy. So those who think there's no way out of our problems, there's always going to be war in the Middle East, or there's always going to be divisions of religion, there's always going to be political discord, political disharmony, that would sound like a tragic reality to be in. Just as if we're all putting all of our efforts to do the very thing that's causing our problems, that our efforts are supposedly to get us out of, that can seem like terrible suffering. So someone was telling me today, a friend of the channel, that he likes the Buddha because he said, well, you can understand Buddhism as the Gautama Buddha's attempt to get out of suffering. How do we get out of the suffering that we experience? And if our suffering is caused by this dialectic, how do we get out of it? That's the difference between tragedy and comedy. When you see this, and you've really seen it, you've gone through the stages of learning that we learn when we read Socrates, repeating it with your friends, talking about it. After, when you go to meet your friend for coffee, you're not talking about Taylor Swift or whatever. You're talking about this. Even if you talked about it yesterday and the day before and the day before that, that's learning. And then you start to see it. It becomes obvious. You level up. Once it's obvious, you can look at the people who aren't doing philosophical midwifery and are instead a slave to this tragic dialectic and laugh at them. Isn't it obvious that you should be doing midwifery? That's hilarious. You're like a duck that's very concerned about that breadcrumb. It's so not important. So obvious that you can fly away or whatever. It's so obvious that you should be doing something else. That it's funny or adorable or cute or hilarious that you're not doing something that's so obvious you should be doing. Like let's say a toddler trying to eat but getting it all over his face. Isn't it obvious to us that you should put it in your mouth and not smear it on your face? That's funny to us. Once it's obvious. When you see this, if you really see that all of us are in a dialectic with our pathologos, that's human life. Unless you do what you're here to do, which is master philosophical midwifery and philosophy. So instead of more precision and clarity through instances and successive refinements of your pathologos, you are refining and getting clarity on your understanding, which is why you had the problems to begin with. You have a choice. Do you want to develop your understanding or develop your problem? If you're only choosing your problem, you're like a baby smearing the custard on its face instead of putting it in your mouth where it's supposed to go. That's the transition from tragedy to comedy. But isn't that cool? That even our suffering is only suffering because we're not doing what's obvious. Once you've seen this, once you've learnt the dialectic, and by the way, all of the texts we've been reading in Plato on this channel is various different ways in which Socrates tells us or shows us or gives us clues about the importance of the dialectic. The dialectic is the exercise of philosophy, is the activity of philosophy. Parmenides said it, Socrates said it, and they keep saying it. So of course you should be doing it to your problems. It's obvious. The most important thing that the best people have told us about over and over, every time we meet up with them for coffee when we read in the mornings, you're doing it anyway. You're doing it anyway. You're just letting a psychic parasite take over. That's one of the things that we've been using to define the pathologos, a psychic parasite. We looked at the ways in which it's a psychic parasite, steals your energy. You can pass it on like a disease. Other things that we can see here as well. All right, so we're in the game anyway. You might as well do what you should be doing. You're a human being that's going to eat anyway. You might as well put the custard in your mouth. That's midwifery. So, talking about Buddha and his desire to remove suffering, well, hopefully, if you ever get a chance to talk to the guy, say, oh, by the way, have you ever read this book? It might be the answer to the question that you're looking for. Isn't that cool? Understanding humanity as a monad, understanding what we should be doing, understanding how to remove suffering. It's no wonder this book is called The New Paradigm for Understanding Human Problems. Let's keep reading. Okay. Understanding this interrelationship between the development of the pathologos and the persona is a way of understanding the nature of man's problems. That's literally what we've been doing the last 10 minutes. Putting together and understanding a monad of the parts that relates the pathologos with the persona. And how do we relate it? Using the idea of dialectic. What a surprise, the thing that we used as our superpower to solve problems, we use it again here. To develop an understanding of the interrelationship between the development of our pathologos, our problem, and the persona. So what are we doing? We are gaining an understanding of the nature of man's problems. Well, if it's the nature of man's problems, then of course it's a monad. Of course it applies to all people. Of course we can get over petty divisions and war and conflict and inequality and all that kind of nonsense crap. Of course, because it's the nature of Bill's problems. Bill the Jew, but not Tony the Palestinian, and not Fred the Catholic, and not Joe the Protestant. There's a different cause for all of their problems. Oh no, wait, that's not what we understood. It's exactly the same for all of us. So all of these divisions are distractions. What do distractions do? Distract us from our goals. What's our most meaningful goal? Well, up there is understanding the interrelationship of our pathologos and our problems and our persona to understand our problems. So therefore, all of these distractions are functioning as a psychic parasite to distract us from our most meaningful goal and cause our conflict. What do you know? The things that prevent us developing an understanding of our pathologos function as a pathologos itself. It's almost as though the pathologos has its own force and power to use many, many ways to protect what threatens its existence. What threatens the existence of the pathologos? Developing an understanding of the development of the pathologos and the persona to understand the nature of man's problems. In other words, this, understanding the universality, the unity of all problems. What do divisions do? Pretend that we're not the same. Oh, you're black, you're white, you're Jewish, you're Protestant, you're Palestinian, you need to be genocided, you're a man, you're a woman, women are less than men, all this crap. No. These are all just various different expressions of pathologos. Defending the seeing of the sameness that will threaten its existence. Let's keep reading. Surfacing the pathologos, understanding how it's maintained, and understanding how it's resolved, must include learning the nature of the counterattack. So when we see this, when we come to this conclusion, you can understand all human activity as simply a dialectic of this. These two parts, we are a walking dialectic of our pathologos, which is the cause of suffering and tragic, until we realize that, well, obviously, if that's the case, we should be doing philosophical midwifery. In which case, now we know the meaning of life, which applies to all people. So there goes irrationality and problems. And also we're learning how to think better, so we can apply that thinking to everyday other problems like technology and stuff. How to better understand the cause of problems to do with resources or resource allocation. All the other stuff is secondary. But we're developing an understanding of understanding itself that would have all these secondary benefits. So we've understood the meaning of life and how to unite all people and understand human problems. That sounds great. Thumbs up for that. And a round of applause. But oh, surely you can't see that, or surely it can't be so obvious. You must have got it wrong, or this video must be crazy, or this book must be written by a madman. Many different ways of undermining the conclusions that you have reached. That's the counterattack, and any understanding of problems have to also include an understanding of the counterattacks that function to undermine the conclusions reached. Right? So you come to all these conclusions, and then you actually meet up with your friend for coffee, and then you don't talk about this. You don't say, oh, I know the meaning of life, by the way. Oh, I know how you can understand all human problems. I know how to understand this craziness. All people are crazy, and everyone's so different. We're all doing different things, and you can't understand humanity itself. Remember that? Well, I actually realized that there's a really simple way of understanding it. And it takes these tragedies of suffering that Buddha wanted to remove. It makes it obvious, so obvious that it's comical when you see people who don't do philosophical midwifery. Therefore, I also know the meaning of life. Let's talk about it over coffee. You come to these conclusions, but you undermine it and you talk about Taylor Swift instead, for whatever reason. That's the counterattack. Why don't you tell your friend that you know the meaning of life? Why not? It'd be fun. You can play the game together. That's the counterattack. Conclusions are doubted, the method challenged. All manner of doubt and disbelief flood the mind of the subject. We have to figure out how these also fit together in the defense of the pathologos. And in doing so, it's a loyalty to those old beliefs. So when you don't talk about this, you're making some jokes about Taylor Swift. Is that because that was your characteristic way of being? You try and win friends by saying silly things? Or you think you're cool by shooting down artists who create things because that's what was done to you when you tried to be an artist, and therefore you've undermined your understanding you've gained in this podcast because of a kind of loyalty to those basic old beliefs, and it functions as an attack against your newly won understanding. Wouldn't that be exactly why you wouldn't talk about it? You just go back to what you're used to, your mask, your persona, your characteristic way of doing things, which are all nothing other than side B of the dialectic with your pathologos, the successive refinements of your image of yourself, your persona. That's the dialectic. Why would you play that? Well, especially after we've concluded that's the comedically tragic cause of all our problems. It must be a kind of loyalty to those beliefs. Why else would you choose that over the much better conversation? Part 2, the condition and the transmission of the pathologo. So how do we get it to begin with? If our life is the dialectic of it with our image of ourselves, then where did it come from? Okay, it's an imitated ideal that's passed on from generation to generation, what we might call a family curse. All right, now we didn't learn it, we had to be convinced. And we had to think that what we were getting convinced of is true. Doesn't it feel more true? The other stuff that we're used to, the nonsense conversations or the putting yourself down way of being, doesn't that feel more true than this kind of conversation? It's that feeling of truth that gives it its power. Okay? What? The truth of what? A fundamental belief about two things, our self and reality. Does it say that we are amazing and great? Or self is the first and final cause, that which we are here to gain a mastery of the dialectic so we can better know ourselves? Or, no, it's not. What is it? It's that our self is unworthy. So when we're trying to find that common thread between all of our various problems, every time we show that loyalty, that false belief, we are trying to put together an idea of the self that we didn't put into words, and therefore we don't suspect it's there. It's going to be something about the self. And everyone's going to be different. Thumbs up. But also, if you were to summarize the nature of all of those possible false beliefs about the self, it will come down to yourself being unworthy. When I read this was beautiful to me. It's magic. As someone who's been studying and practicing midwifery for 20 years, seen hundreds or thousands of different midwife talks, you want to understand what's going on as a principle. And this one word nails it. Some people think they're not smart, or they're not capable, or they can't learn, or they can't do math, or they're not creative, or no one likes them, or they're not friendly, or women don't like them, or whatever. There are so many different possible ones. But you can understand all of them with a simple principle: unworthy. All of those are various different ways in which yourself is unworthy. Isn't that magic? Wow. Okay, and the other kind of false belief, pathologos belief, is about reality. That reality is self. Reality is the unfolding of self. Reality is knowable. Reality is, what did we say at the start of this chapter? It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are a part of a caring universe, reality. And it's also intelligible. What does intelligible mean? Understandable. There's our dialectic. But also knowable. That's what intelligible means. It means both, dianoia and nous. Not only can you develop an understanding of it, again, universal, it's not belief, it's not division. If it's understanding, then everyone can have it. No need for war or inequality or wealth or hierarchies that say this person gets to be rich, that person doesn't. This person drops the bombs, that person gets their family murdered. Nope. Doesn't work in understanding. That's division among beliefs. This is why this can be understood as the next level of human evolution. Because our problems are all based on division. Fascism, Nazism, capitalism, destruction of the environment for profits for shareholders, all that kind of crap. War. This is stupid, barbaric, which was what we saw in our previous chapter. The big puzzle, why can we be so rational when inventing the internet, but so immature and irrational when dealing with ourselves? Because we are at this threshold to move into this next stage of evolution. Which is what? Realizing that the reality we find ourselves in is understandable. What's that? Beyond belief. We can get rid of belief. We can appreciate that it helped us in our evolution from cavemen to blindly have that loyalty to the tribe because we didn't have logos and understanding yet. Blindly obey the caveman tribe leader so we wouldn't venture out of the cave on our own meaningful goals and get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Yes, okay, we can understand all problems were solutions that no longer apply now. We can give beliefs a nice pat on the head and okay, you've done your job, but you're not needed anymore. We can move into the next level, which is understanding. But intelligible is not just understanding. You verify that understanding in direct experience. That's why we have something called nous, or ousia, or the realm of being. I've got an itchy nose today. That's why I keep scratching the top of my nose, the outside of my nose. So that's what intelligible means, and it's entirely possible to verify for yourself. Okay, so therefore, the pathologos belief about reality, remember, self was unworthy. Reality was, what was it? Integrity. There's a lack of integrity. And at the start of this chapter, integrity involves realizing that reality is caring, cares about you, and also is understandable. There we go. And that understanding is knowable as well. We can know it all at once. Nous. The verification is a proof, since it is a way of understanding based on the realization our mind constantly communicates for us and for our benefit. The communications are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstances. For while the scope of the mind is all pervasive, its precision is always directed to what's personally significant. We can demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams, fantasies, the dreams that visit us in our sleep, each one of them are like doorways into the richest sources of insights into our life. What we discover through these insights is that mind itself, reality itself, provides ample evidence for its own goodness and intelligibility. From here, just this one amazing paragraph, one of the greatest paragraphs ever written by a human being, we can see ample evidence within this paragraph of what it would mean to see reality as having integrity. Do it yourself, pull it out yourself. Integrity means what? Intelligible, caring. Goodness provides its own ample evidence. Everything it does is a doorway to the richest, most profound insights into your own life. All of that you can put together into a monad and unify that monad with one word. There's your understanding. That's the kind of integrity that reality is. Therefore, anything against that is a pathologos. Okay? Isn't that cool? All right, so understanding is something you have for yourself. You can share with others. You can function with it. It affects your seeing. You see through your understanding. You can verify your understanding. That's the whole point of enlightenment and the realm of nous and philosophy. But what characterizes belief is you are following some other douchebag. You have been convinced that you are ignorant about your own state of being, your own nature of being. Reality is, being is your own mind. And beyond that is your very self. What absurdity to say that you can't know those things. You're not good enough. You're incapable. You can't do midwifery. You can't discover the nature of self and reality. The whole point, reason you're here for. What absurdity! I think I got a mozzie bot on my nose because it's not going away with itching. But someone had to convince you of that absurdity so that you sacrifice that meaning of life that you're here to do for believing some other joker. Right? So, absurd, but also comic when we see the absurdity. So, we have to be convinced that we are ignorant of our very own being and deluded about what we have regarded as real, and that they know us. They are closer to God. That's why they get to be king. That's why they get to be pope. That's why they get to be Elon Musk with $1 billion and we all have to suffer. That's why they get to own all the resources and get to sell it back to us. They are somehow better and more knowing of self and reality. That's at the essence of all of these divisions into these false hierarchies that are used to justify inequality, oppression, and violence. That's all it is. So very common nowadays, because capitalism, marketing, these people who are trying to get money, they have to justify why there is such a thing as wealthy people. Because wealth is a zero-sum game. If there's one billionaire, that has to be everyone else suffering. If everyone had $1 billion, we wouldn't have billionaires. We would all be rich. So how can you justify oppression and exploitation just so one or two people get to have too much? There must be an inherent hierarchy that says they are better. Elon Musk is smarter and better than you. Same thing with the king. They have a divine right to rule. Same thing with the prophets. They are selected by God. All nonsense, all fairy tales. And the only people who buy into it, the bootlickers for Elon Musk, are those who have already been convinced, and in a culture of being convinced to believe. That's why fascists and Republicans and right-wingers and stuff target religious people. They aren't the religious party. There's nothing religious about what they do. Now, I'm going to use Donald Trump, not because, whatever. He's just such an easy caricature of fascism. He is the most immoral, unchristian person, just even using a traditional definition of Christianity. But the Christians or the religious people support him. Why? Doesn't make any sense. Because they have already been convinced that they are deluded about their own being and what is real and self and reality in order to believe others, because religion means religios, to be bound by a saving belief. That's what it means. You can't go to the Christian picnic if you don't believe in Jesus. It's like this, the whole thing. So, the people who are being abused, the poorest people, are tricked to vote for those capitalists who are the very ones exploiting them. Not because they actually serve their interests, but because they are in a culture where they sacrifice their own understanding, which will get them to understand that it's not for their benefit, for belief. Beliefs don't have to be true. You're just believing someone. So yeah, the fascists, right-wingers can say, oh, we're the working class. We're the working class party, while being the exact opposite. So it makes the left-wingers so infuriated. They are every sentence, they're directly contradicting themselves. Doesn't matter. You don't prove that Mary was a virgin. There's no need for evidence. That's what belief means. So, you could say that's a kind of, these are the implications to living a life where we don't do midwifery. So another level of suffering or another level of tragic comedy that if you're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, not only are you putting all your efforts to doing the thing that causes your suffering, you are a walking dialectic of your pathologos unless you're doing midwifery. Not only that, you're just going to get exploited by the worst people in the world as well because they play into believers. Now, I'm using religion, but it doesn't have to be religion. If you look at the sorts of people who support them, they use the word belief all the time. Believe in the free market, believe in libertarianism, believe in the American dream. Doesn't have to be religious belief. It's just belief itself. Okay, so unless we are doing this, we're setting ourselves up to be manipulated by the worst kinds of people. And therefore, being tricked into acting against our own very interests, that's terrible or tragic or comedic if you realize, well, why aren't you doing midwifery? Is what we're here for. Isn't it obvious? Why aren't you putting the custard in your mouth, baby? That's what your mouth's for. Isn't it obvious? So when a baby smears the custard on its face, doing the very opposite of what eating is, we don't cry and call it a tragedy. We laugh at them because it's obvious that you shouldn't be doing it. It doesn't take much to say, hey, put it in your mouth. Just as it doesn't take much for us to, yeah, you're just playing out your pathologos. So do midwifery. Of course, that's what the pathologos is for. If you didn't have a pathologos, you would have no need to develop a dialectic on what's false about self and reality. You could just spend your life doing philosophy, developing a dialectic on the truth about self and reality that we forgot when we were born. We had no imperative forcing us to master the dialectic on what's false. And we know that dialectic has two parts. Dialectic is, you say what is true and what isn't true. Where is it? Here we go. Do a dialectic on if philosophy exists, because this is real philosophy, so it's relevant. You use those four categories: definition, demonstration, division, and then a conclusion, which takes you back to the start. And you've gained, so you end up higher than when you left off because you've learnt. And so you do it again, and so on and so on. But if you're doing a dialectic on what if philosophy exists, you also have to do side B. What if philosophy doesn't exist? It would be an opinion. Just using an opinion from the chat. It would be the opinion that libertarian is actually good and not the logos and the dialectic. Because this is a belief that I have and I'm attached to. Why? Because philosophy doesn't exist as truth in being that's universal, and we don't have divisions between fascists and Nazis and libertarians and all those sorts of divisions that get people fighting. No. There's no existence that is universal. It's just a matter of opinion. And I think my opinion's best. Because I agree with all of my own opinions. That's what makes me a realist. Okay? So this is what would follow. And part of being human is having to deal with that. And then waking up to philosophy, awakening philosophy. That's the name of the channel. We're really happy when that happens. So we dance. Right? When you awaken philosophy, you just apply this to what's true. But we get given a lot of this. Why? So we can learn the dialectics, what we're here for. Socrates says it over and over. Parmenides says it over and over. Zeno says it over and over. We understand it for ourselves over and over by applying it to our reading and this text over and over. So, if we have our problems to do it, why aren't you doing it? If you are hungry so that you can, if you have the custard to put it in your mouth, little baby, why aren't you putting it in your mouth? But it's funny because it's obvious. So when a baby puts the custard on his mouth instead of eating it, we laugh and we think it's funny. It's comedic. The baby might be experiencing a tragedy if he's really hungry, but it's okay. We can say, just put it in your mouth. It's easy. So we say to humanity, just do midwifery. It's easy and fun. And they say,
wow.
And then they will give us a round of applause. And they'll say,
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey.
I no longer want to eat a monkey like Joe Rogan. I want to do midwifery.
I don't want to eat a monkey. Wow.
Okay? It's exactly what will happen. All right, so we can't know what's real about ourselves in reality. They know us better than us for some reason. Boo. Someone must have appeared very convincing, and that could have only occurred if someone appeared as a... Noah. We talked about philosophy being the dialectic through understanding to confirm it in the experience of reality, the enlightenment experience, everything all at once, oneness, the monad of reality. We call that nous, but we don't have that word in English, so the closest word we use is knowing. We all want to be knowers. But without philosophy, you just pretend. So you act like a knower. Oh yes, capitalism is good. No, it's not. Everyone knows it's not. No, I'm an economist. I know more than you. We need to punish criminals. No, we don't. We just do midwifery. That's what we're here for. No, I'm a knower. I know more than you. Okay? Appearance. The appearance itself becomes idolized through that drama, and the message was believed. The idealized image in the drama becomes the object to be imitated because we all want to be knowers. What's knowing? Oh, to use a mastery of the logos through the dialectic to help people to, together with our friends, come to an understanding and nous of reality and self in philosophy, and also applied to what's false. Use the mastery of the dialectic to uncover our unsuspected false beliefs about self and reality and free us from them to become free. Purification and perfection. Escaping fate and reaching destiny. Isn't that what it means to be a knower? Yes. But do these people who convince us not to do this do that? How many people do you know who does that? Not many, if any. But every parent wants to pretend. Everyone is a king of the castle. King of the castle. King of the castle. Everyone's their own pope of their own house religion. Everyone is cosplaying knowingness. By the way, the dialectic has two, self and other, Socrates and Meno. In the negative, it's our false belief about ourselves that's unsuspected and the self-image we develop. In other words, you're always part of the game. There's no exclusion. On the wrong team, on the wrong color, in the wrong gender. You're the wrong working class or whatever, or you're not middle class or upper class or whatever. Bollocks. Bollocks to all that. Why? Because the dialectic, which is the next stage in human evolution and the very thing we're supposed to be doing while alive, obviously, that's why it's funny, means you play. Everyone is included. That's the game. Otherwise, why would you be here if you couldn't play? Imagine going onto a football team and you look around and all 11 people on your team is wearing the same uniform, has the football boots on. So no, you can't play. Well, why not? I wouldn't be here if I couldn't play. I wouldn't have a uniform and boots. That's what it means to be human. The boots, you could say, is, I don't know, language. Our uniform is our ability to share in the logos. We can all play. So if someone's saying, oh, I know you better than you know yourself, you're saying you can't play. So all these faith-based or belief-based systems. What political party do you believe in? What religion do you believe in? And so on and so on. It's exclusionary, which is absurd. It's hilarious. Imagine sitting down to play chess with someone and they say, oh, no, but I can't play. That's crazy. You're crazy. It's funny. They might be sad because they love chess, or they're suffering because they can't play chess. But we would say, no, it's funny. Think about it. Isn't it absurd that you think you can't play the very game that you're sitting here to play? Don't be sad, Buddha. It ain't all suffering when you see it's obvious that you can play. What's the game? This. And how many times have you repeated it? Lots. That's called learning. That's what we're here to do. You gotta repeat it over coffee. So, belief. Convinced you don't know. By the way, can you convince someone you don't know, especially if they don't know anything? No. It's an appearance through a drama. Look how loud I'm yelling. I must be true. Look at how viciously I punch or smack my kid. I must be right. Look how I do genocide to that race. I must be right. Look how I threaten eternal suffering in hell for those who don't agree with my opinions. I must be right. These are all the drama. They're all different, but the sameness within each of them is it's a drama that presents an idealized image. That's them cosplaying as being knowing. And because we all want to be knowing, so long as we believe this bullshit, it becomes our standard that we judge as knowing, that we play out in our lives. In other words, our life as a living dialectic has at its cause or its goal. So in philosophy, we say if philosophy exists, or if beauty, let's use a different color. If beauty exists, if justice exists, and if it doesn't, we do this so that we develop not only an understanding, it's we just need the Platonic dialogues because it gives us what we need. We don't have to go on some trek to the Himalayas like Doctor Strange did and seek out a mysterious guru and sit under a waterfall for 40 years. No, just got to read this book, the Midwifery book, and Plato. Gives us what we need to have the terms that we can arrange in a dialectic so that that's understanding or dianoia that functions as a gateway to nous. This is why it's an intellectual yoga or spiritual method. Its goal is nous, what we call in English knowing. And so it ain't just a logical exercise as people are taught philosophy is in college sometimes. That's crazy. You're crazy. No, you're hilariously ignorant, we would say. You call yourself a philosopher? You call Parmenides a logical exercise? You think philosophy is logic for debating opinions? You're like a baby who is smearing the custard in your face instead of putting it in your mouth. That's how crazy, that's how off the mark you are. And you only have to read one Balboa translation of any of the Platonic dialogues to see obviously you're coming down on the side of the ignorant person if you teach philosophy that way. Over and over, Socrates says, this is not what philosophy is at all. That's crazy. You're crazy. It's this other thing, which is what? The development of the dialectic or the logos as a transition to nous. And as we're saying, everything you see in philosophy, if it exists, you can apply it to the negative if it doesn't exist. So too, do we play out our pathologos, not the logos, in a dialectic of our problems, that's our life if you're not in midwifery, which is creating the conditions for not actual nous or knowing, but that imitated ideal of knowing. That's the goal. That's the motivation. That's why we do it. That's why we go for the girls we go with. marry the girl we marry or the guy you marry. That's why we sabotage ourselves at this conversation or apply for this kind of job or give up on this goal. We are creating the conditions to get to this. This is the shining light behind it all. Which is exactly the same as philosophy, only philosophy is actual knowing. Nous, ousia, mind knowing itself. Enlightenment. We are doing a shadow of enlightenment. That's what we're reading. Isn't that cool? So behind this silliness is a idealized image of what it means to pretend to be knowing. The transmission of a belief from one person to another requires a special or unique situation. There are several factors that we have to be brought together for the transmission, okay? What are those factors? Openness and receptivity. Okay, everything we see here within the pathologos origin scene, we could also apply to the spiritual origin scene. Now, the word for spiritual origin scene is formally the initiation. So, for instance, you have to be open and receptive. So all the various different spiritual traditions, you have to prove that you actually want to be there. You have to sit outside the ashram for 40 days without food until they let you in, or you have to prove that you can sit silently on a mat for however long, or whatever, to prove that you're actually open, you're not just pretending. Because it's a necessary condition for enlightenment. If you think you already got it all figured out, like Mino, in our reading of Mino, then how are you going to be receptive to a new teaching? Okay? The event or the stage would only be convincing if we were the sole object. Again, spirituality, what would be the equivalent? Well, I think they call it Dokusan sometimes, where you go to the back room with the guru. So you go out of the meditation hall and you have a one-on-one conversation where they can pass on something. You are the sole object, and you are the only person in the audience. So too for our origin scene. Again, you're convinced the guru knows reality, so too do your parents. And when they cosplay the guru, everyone wants to cosplay the guru, ain't no one wants to sit on the mat. That used to be a bumper sticker that I imagined back in the day. When I was in California, learning this with Dr. Grimes, I became very aware because there are a lot of different people interested in spirituality that came through the Noetic Society and was interested in learning midwifery for a while, and there came a point where they would duck out, and I became very evident that everyone wants to pretend to be the guru, or everyone wants to play the guru, but ain't no one want to sit on a mat. In other words, parents, for example, pretend to be wise and knowing, but how many, especially in Western cultures, how often do they sit on a mat and meditate? Because that's what a guru is supposed to do. Now, we don't have to do the sitting on a mat. That's just a metaphor for something difficult that requires a specialty and a dedication and focus. In other words, you could say everyone wants to be an architect, but no one wants to go to architecture university or wherever they go to, graphic design school, or whatever. A specialized learning that requires dedication that not everyone does. That's the saying. Now, in this role, it's not sitting on a mat, because we are doing a meditation with the dialectic. We've been talking about this. All of the conditions, all of these conditions for spiritual initiation, we see in the pathologos, which means what? Everything we see in the pathologos, we see in the logos. So while different spiritual traditions pick out these parts and they have their, Dokusan to be a sole object of focus, they have their various ways of undermining what the student knows, so he doesn't think he knows everything. They have like koans, so you become open and receptive, like, oh, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Yeah, I don't know, I'm really open. We don't have to play those games, because if we can see that all of these things are necessary in the pathologos, it has to have its equivalent in the logos. So if the pathologos is the conditions for this, or there is a kind of dialectic going on between, getting my pen, between parent and child, so all of these conditions we're talking about, in what's false over here, parent and child, so too, in philosophy, there must be the equivalent in the actual dialectic. In other words, the dialectic is the ideal spiritual tradition. We don't have to pretend to have all of these like openness and, seeking knowing and all this sort of stuff through various different spiritual techniques. I mean, not saying that they're wrong, but they are different aspects of the monad or whole that we see as philosophy. So we are doing what we just read in the text earlier in the series, the new spiritual paradigm that is necessary for all of them, or to be said in a better way, in the text it was said, a new spiritual system that will rival anything else we see around us. All right, so good for us. So, youthful openness and receptivity, sole object. They really knew us in our reality. There's this knowing of self and reality. That's why it becomes an ideal. Wow, they really convinced me they knew self and reality. Hang on a second. Isn't this quest to know self and reality the very quest of being a human being that gets us into philosophy? Yep. But my ma or pa didn't do that. They just had to do this game. So there's no need for philosophy. It's a waste of time. To know self and reality doesn't involve mastering the art of the logos and the dialectic. It's just whatever they did. Why? Because it wouldn't have been convincing unless they convinced us that they knew us and reality, self and reality. So it's a kind of bastardized spiritual tradition, and we could say that all different spiritual traditions are various mitigations of philosophy, the paradigm of the spiritual tradition. So this is a bastardization of philosophy. You could say it's an usurper to a throne. We are all philosophers. The only problem is someone got in the way, and that organ that seeks philosophy, it came along and pretended to be a philosopher, had a beard and a like an old robe or something, and is sitting on the throne that philosophy should be sitting on. So we don't think we need philosophy because we don't have an empty throne. Because there is a pretender. This imitation of what it means to know reality and self. Okay. Also, they have to prove that it was done for our benefit. So not only so the entire presentation becomes the ideal for the model that we imitate. But for all of that work and drama, we do not know what we must believe. Okay, yeah, should be able to know. That's good. Be on Twitch. Nice. We have to come to the conclusion ourselves. It's all a big setup. Now, we must see how each of these elements produce the pathologos and why it is so difficult to free oneself from the influences of the pathologos. Why? Okay, why are all these necessary? And that's what we were doing today. This is why we're reviewing. We do a lot of reviewing on this channel. Because when we get to a point where it says, hey, you must see why these things have to come together. That's PSA. Review and put it together and push the implications. Use the dialectic to structure it. Figure it out. Why? It's learning. That's what you're here for. I'm not just going to give you a belief. Do some work. So good for us. Okay, but also, so we talked about how they come together, but we're going to keep reading to get more information about that and why it's difficult to free ourselves from that influence. We've talked a lot about that today. We all want to be the knower, but ain't no one want to read the Balboa translation of Plato. That'll be our new bumper sticker. Hey, everyone wants to play the Noah, but ain't no one out there reading Balboa. Oh, it rhymes, kind of. We all want to be a Noah, but ain't no one out there reading Balboa. That's a bumper sticker for your car. Okay, before a situation can have this effect on us, by the way, Balboa translation is just a translation of Socrates where we actually have the real words so we can actually play the game. And then we can see how tragic it was for the last 1500 years. Every translation of Socrates has been the exact opposite of what philosophy is, which is bizarre. Actually, it's comedic. If we realize we have a way out, we have a Balboa translation. But also what's weird is the people who have a harder time getting into real philosophy are often those who put the extra time and effort and money into studying philosophy formally. Because all of the non-Balboa translations of Socrates literally bastardize it all to crap, to the point where you end up learning the exact opposite of what Socrates is saying. So we're reading the Meno. The Meno is representing what philosophy ain't. But if we read any of the other translations, it's translating it in the way that Meno thinks. It's insane. And one of the reasons we are in this predicament as a human race, one of the great betrayals against philosophy, our spiritual and intellectual tradition, and heritage, and golden age, and birthright. So what? Same thing for philosophy. Same thing for human life. That's the tragic irony of human life. If all of the experiences we have in life are refining this dialectic between our pathologos and self-image, solidifying the cause of our problems, then the more effort you put into doing the things, the more you're actually solidifying the very cause of your problems. Isn't that terrible or tragic or suffering or a catch-22? Just like in formal philosophy education. At this part of history, at least, until the Balboa translations become mainstream and whatever. So a great betrayal and tragedy against philosophy, or comedic if we see it's obvious that we need to make the shift, and we realize that we can. Same thing for here. Yeah, obvious. If that's what you're doing, then do midwifery. Isn't it obvious? And it's hilarious if you're not. Okay. So before a situation can have this effect on us, the factors must be present. There must be people who are significant to us. They're playing out a particular role. For our part, we have to be in a particularly sensitive and open state of mind. So often when we were in a high state, which is curious, to conclude as we did. For these factors come in together as unusual. It's marked in contrast to our everyday familiar world. This is a rare moment. I get to go backstage with the guru. Dad doesn't usually say anything, but now he's telling me, listen son, let me tell you about women. Oh wow, this is very different. Ma and Pa are finally showing themselves. The priest is taking me backstage to really tell me what the secret tradition of Christianity is. Oh, I get to be initiated into level 8 Freemason. Now I get the real teaching. That kind of thing. It's rare. It's a rare moment. Our formative learning takes place under the authority of the family. It is here that we learn from our guardians the false belief of the family and clan. So we're talking about the false beliefs, but it's the family tradition. We talk about the family curse. And we also be talking a lot about how it has its origins in caveman days. The caveman clan. There's a way, it's important that we all act as one, so one of us doesn't wander off and get eaten by saber-toothed tigers. There might be a certain way that will identify us, our clan, from that clan, back before we developed sophisticated language and thinking. All right, so the origins in history of the pathologos. Just as we are looking at the origins of our individual pathologos, you need both. The whole and the parts. Or the specifics and the general. As above, so below. Another good bumper sticker. So, under their guardianship, and what we learn is maintained within the walls. One of us. What? Talking about religion, not in my house. Talking about politics, not in my house. Wanting to go to college, not one of my kids. Within these walls, you follow my rules. Talk louder so they can hear the philosophy. That's funny what you say in the chat. Talk louder so they can hear the philosophy. It's really curious. Like, there aren't a lot of people around where I live that are into philosophy. So a lot of my more meaningful philosophical conversations, or dialectics, because philosophy is a relationship.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
It's not a one-person game. It happened over the phone. And what's really curious, the closer I get to an insight, or the more significant what I'm saying, the more strangers who normally wouldn't be paying any attention to anyone else, it's none of their business what I'm saying, seem to get triggered without actually understanding anything that's being said. It's always puzzled me. You're sitting at the park having a great conversation with someone on the phone, and then all these strangers are just like zombies. Brains. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's 50 other people in the park. Why are you not acting weird in front of them and aggressive, violent, and self-righteous? Like, oh, I'm just angry at you and I don't know why. Always puzzled me. Maybe it's because what we're learning about the pathologos, it's a psychic parasite that seeks to defend and counterattack things that threaten its existence. Right, yeah. Right, so you have people who go blank. I'm talking about people who are strangers who just get angry and aggressive and violent. I used to call them barking dogs because sometimes they would lose all recourse to language and they would just be making yelling noises. I was like, I've never seen people like this. This is so bizarre, so feral. Why? Because within these walls, we don't talk in this way. To suggest you can understand problems, to suggest there isn't a hierarchy and dad's on the top and grandpa's beyond him and Jesus as the head of it all. No, if you threaten a hierarchy and say we're all the same, self and mind, engaged in a dialectic together that unifies all humanity and solves all human problems, not under this house. Because if that was the case, then dad was wrong when he punished your brother. Or mum was wrong when she married someone who was a brute. Or we were all wrong when we went to Sunday school for 15 years growing up. All of the bollocks that we've been doing within the family would be absurd. And they can't be knowers. And a lot of people become parents so they can finally play out the knowing role. Because we all want to be knowers, but no one's reading the Balboas. We all want to play the guru, but ain't no one sitting on a mat. We all want to seek knowledge, but instead of purifying our false beliefs through midwifery and developing a dianoia and nous through the dialectic in philosophy, Balboa, we can just have kids. And then we talked about this earlier. We read, no one's interested in our stupid beliefs. No one cares. And even if we did find a situation where someone wants to listen to our dumb advice, we know it's going to be unlikely that they already agree with us. And if it challenges their beliefs, they're probably going to get angry or just ignore us. So the conditions where you can play out this nonsense is when you have kids, because they don't know any better, they're too young, they're stuck with you, all these conditions. So what? So within the walls of the home, don't speak like that. has to be, while the pathologos initiation can be a rare moment, everything else has to maintain it. Don't ask questions about that scene. We don't talk about that in this house or whatever. Now, that's also what must be behind the seemingly barking dogs or irrational behavior of strangers if you happen to be talking at a high level of the logos in their vicinity. Nothing to do with them. That's their education. They are a good student to a terrible teacher. Because we saw the pathologos wants to attack anything that threatens its existence. And what threatens the existence of injustice and tyranny and our suffering? Having fun, being excited, talking with your friends about understanding what's most meaningful, the absolute best parts of life is the most threatening, therefore turns people into crazy, stupid zombies or angry zombies, which is tragic. The very thing we need to solve all problems, individually and collectively, the very thing that makes life worth living, the very meaning for being alive, the meaning of life, our destiny or our purpose for being here, to have fun and excitement, talking with our friends about what's most meaningful, discovering the logos, applying the dialectic, rising to the level of principles, seeing it's universal for all and for all time, in whatever life our next life is, in our next incarnation or planet we're on, and also whatever people, no more divisions between race or culture or gender or anything else. The very thing that makes it worth being here is the thing that threatens the pathologos. So these people who are acting irrationally in the way we've been mentioning are attacking the very thing that makes life good and fun, which is tragic or hilarious. Right? I mean, I'm sure there are lots of sayings, like stories to illustrate this idea. Like, I don't know, someone saying, I'm starving, I need food. And, oh, here we go. Here's a sandwich. Not from you. Or, I'm starving, I'm gonna starve to death. Here's a sandwich. Is there mayonnaise on this? No thanks. I don't know. I'm sure there are stories like that. There's one, the guy was on top of a house and it was a bit flooding and he was praying to Jesus, save me, save me. And then a boat comes by and he says, I'm here to save you. No, I don't need you because I have my faith. And then a helicopter comes and the same thing. And then, I don't know, someone else comes and he ignores that too. And eventually he drowns and he meets Jesus in the afterlife. This is just a silly story, a silly joke. He goes, oh, Jesus, I thought I believed in you hard. And Jesus goes, but I sent you a plane and a helicopter and a boat. Yeah, that's not that funny or not a very good story because for whatever reason. But it's the idea of this very thing that you're weirdly defending is the very thing that makes life fun and worth living. Why? Because these false beliefs come from an authority of the family passed on through the family clan and maintained through the walls of our home. One's home has been called one's castle. We could also say it's one's church. Within its walls, guardians rule with a strange, powerful authority. It is from these authorities and with them that we learned our pathologos. Right. If I was starving and you gave me meat, I would starve. But if I was on a plane and it went down, I would eat the dead fat guy. Okay. Okay, so the equivalent would be, if I was suffering in my life and I heard you having fun talking about the midwifery, the logos and dialectic, I would get mad at you, even though it's the very thing that I need to solve my problems myself. But if I was on the brink of death And Socrates appeared as a vision and said, learn the dialectic before you pass on to the next world. Then I would do it. I don't know, something like that. Sometimes I wonder how important it is for philosophers to wear robes or to shave their head or something. The message is still the same, but for some reason people only listen to you when you communicate the fun, important, obvious thing that we're here to do. If you look a certain way or you sound a certain way. I've seen many midwife talks where the person wasn't paying any attention until the midwife started yelling at them the same way their mum and dad yelled at them. Oh, this Pierre Grimes fellow actually is, I'm going to listen now. Now he knows the truth. In the very next midwife talk, Pierre Grimes would be whispering to someone else. Because in their family was very quiet, and that's what it means to be knowing. Exactly the same message. It's always the same. But for some people, you have to look a certain way. Here we're finding out why. This all comes down to why it's difficult to free ourselves from the influences, to do with this imitation and this kind of scene. Okay, to have been convinced about something so fundamental as a basic belief of to the chat. Got funny looks when I was in Walmart. Was talking of a shirt so ugly you couldn't look away. Then it was beautiful. Meaning it was never really ugly in reality. Interesting. Appearances and truth. That's the game we're in. To have been convinced about something so fundamental as a basic belief about oneself is not easily duplicated. How did the authority gain their authority and power to convince? We learn many things from many people without imitating the convincer. Right? You might learn science from your science teacher, but you don't talk like this the way he did when you were in grade 10. I don't know. To have idealized the convincer into something so ideal that the convincer itself becomes an object of imitation is more than strange. But it becomes far more strange when we realize that the act of convincing and that the belief have become elevated into the standard. So I was talking about just now, oh, he's yelling, that's the standard. Now I'm going to listen to Pierre Grimes, the great midwife, because now he's yelling at me. Or the other person is right after the loud person. He's whispering. Another person, he's using few words. That's what it meant to be wise in my house, because my dad didn't say much. All right? Because the way it was convinced and the belief becomes the standard for knowing and of knowledge itself. Again, usurpers to the throne. Because that's what we want in philosophy. What is knowing and what is knowledge? That's what we want to get, but this is in the way. So we have to be doing midwifery along with philosophy to purify what's false, to make room for what's true. If this is a mystery that we must, it is this mystery we must clear, talking about purification. Consider, we know when someone breaks free from the usual course or pattern in their life. We know when someone shifts into playing an authority role and insists on some belief for his or hers in true. We can see that shift when they start acting a certain way, playing the knower, imitating mum or dad. When we ourselves take on a knowing role, we know that others are not likely to share in our beliefs, and some are likely to disagree with us. We know that not many people really care what we think in our dumb opinions, even if we go door to door with the Bible. Unless it happens to challenge their own way of being, then they're going to get furious and they're going to pay attention to yell at you. Thus, we have difficulty finding situations where we can share our most fundamental beliefs with others. Again, the principle of philosophy. It's not a one-person game. Share your insights, share your understanding, join the Discord. There should be a link below. But we want to share even our false beliefs, right? When we do, we can't be sure our beliefs will be treated with the same respect that we treat them. For all this uncertainty and difficulty, we know that we are, even though we still know that we want to play the goddamn Noah. Everyone wants to cosplay the Noah. That's our the many bumper stickers we've invented today. So even though there's all these uncertainty about finding someone to share our deeply held beliefs, fundamental beliefs, and it's going to be dangerous or tricky or no one's going to care, but we still want to do it because we really think we'll enjoy it. We play it out because there is something uplifting about playing the knowing role. And there's a certain intensity. Oh yes, I'm alive when I know things that way. And we feel noble and proud and important. So if we can't do it before one group, we'll try it out in others. Right? Thus, let us consider our condition. We know that there are very few times when we can give voice to what's most vital for us. Our silence makes us strangers. We need to, again, it's the same thing as the logos, just what's false. We need to speak up. We need to put words on our insights. We need to put words on our highest experiences. We need to share it with our friends. We actually seek beauty itself. True nous or knowing is bliss. All of those same principles done in its opposite. We're learning here. Our silence makes us strangers to ourselves. We are often unaware of how strongly we hold to our most basic beliefs about ourselves. We don't know. Equally, we're only dimly aware that we have come to personal conclusions about the significance of the reality we experience. Most people don't even know it. Like, oh, it's just the way it is. Like, well, where did you learn that? What do you mean learn it? It's just obvious. It's just the way the world is. I didn't learn it. It's just, what? Isn't it just the way the world is? Isn't it obvious? You don't know. You came to a conclusion about the reality you're in. Obviously, there's no God, or obviously, world is suffering, or whatever. What may be even more surprising is that we guard jealously the strong opinion about how we are to be. Right? In my family, we all speak like this, right? So don't you ever challenge my way of being, because that's what it means to be tough. And I like it, and there's intensity. I can say, no, that's not on, mate. I'm going to give you a bunch of knucks. Give me 50 quid or I'll give you a bunch of knucks. I'm going to guard this way of being and appear. So I want to appear in this way in my reality. My son. That's my Jason Stamos. Not Jason Stamos. Jason Statham impression. My son. All right there, my son. It's not. It's just a British tough guy. I got to work on my impression. It just so happens that when we find ourselves in situations where we can express what we believe and feel about life, we seize them. Oh, yes. Can I give you some advice? Oh, get out. Can I tell you about Jesus? Oh, get out. And as soon as someone is vulnerable, pounce. Oh, you're in a vulnerable position. Let me tell you about the Lord. We seize those opportunities to play the knower with our dumb opinions we love so much and jealously guard. And that way of being when we, play it out. Even if we take the opportunity to express ourselves, we can't be sure the audience will accept our message. But there is one receptive audience. There are people who will listen and care about what we say, and they will offer little, if any, resistance or opposition to, or even counter arguments to what we say. Who is that prime audience? Our children. Or our family. It is with our own children, there we go, that these young ones in our care that we express our deepest concerns. We arrange special times for them to learn about our worries. Let me tell you about the world, son. And our beliefs. Oh, yay. Right? It is before them that we present what is most personally significant to us. We feel justified when we communicate these highly regarded beliefs of ours. We do so with sincerity and power because we believe we are doing it for their benefit, not our own sick kind of pleasure of playing out this imitation game that we've been trying in every other situation of our life, but no one cares. Even if they did care, they're probably not going to agree. And the only time they're probably going to care is if it challenges them. They're just going to get mad at us. Or they're going to be annoying with their counter arguments because my dumb opinions are wrong because it didn't come through evidence. It wouldn't be opinion if it came through logos. It would be understanding. And that's philosophy. But even to that, even though we have all these conditions, we still try and do it all the time until we finally get some little babies. They don't know any better. Oh, wow, really? Oh yeah, yes. You see, no one knows this, my son, but let me tell you about the world. Oh. All right, sincerity and power. We think we're actually helping them. All right, so the idea of love is tied in here. We think we're doing it for their benefit. These special times and situations, the Noah in us emerges. Oh, finally we can be alive. And these special times become memorable because they have been made significant. Right, that one time that dad bought pizza and watched the game with you and turned to you and said, look, let me tell you about the black guys on a football team. Wow, I got pizza and it's special, and he told me a belief and made me racist just like him. I can't wait to have my own kids to pass on my family illness. I mean, racism. I mean, true belief that I hold dear and I think it's true and I have sincerity and I think it's benefiting. All right. From situations like these, we come to see that those guardians who are most significant to us cared enough to emerge as knowing. They went to this effort. And those moments, they appear authoritarian. All right. We've been talking about certain and powerful. We've been talking about how the fascists and right-wingers and stuff prey on a certain kind of people who are the most poor and have the most difficulty, and they are being exploited the most by those fascists and capitalists. They can be characterized as authoritarian, and the people who go along with it are people who are followers of authority. So people who are interested in belief a lot. Doesn't have to be a religion, just the word belief. Obviously in America they target Christians, but spin a globe and put your finger on a map. Whatever the belief tradition is in that area, that's when the authoritarians, that's what the authoritarians will use to target. Oh, I'm very into this Torah, or the Vedic scriptures, or the Quran, whatever. Certain and powerful. Of course, in control. Oh, yes. They were believable, and in believing them, we were accepted as a member of the family clan. Right? The more important being in a group is, as your highest way of being a self. To be accepted in a group, that being bigger than yourself. That's not true self, that's not true being, but it's a whole. You're a part of a greater whole. That can be the highest kind of wholeness for some people. Of course, in philosophy, we want to go to being, which is the whole of all wholes, and beyond that to an even greater whole that doesn't even have parts. So we're not really interested in, I don't know, wearing the uniform of a team to get the thumbs up. Okay, but it's the authoritarians who want to be in control, appeal to that kind of person. Okay, just checking with the chat. Oh, okay, cool. Talking to your cousin about the Bible. They stopped talking about the Bible really fast. Oh, they wanted to play the Noah, and as soon as you gave a counter argument back, they got upset. And they, you've read it. 50 quid for a bunch of nugs sounds nice. Nugs, my friend, not a nug. Not a tasty, sticky, juicy nug. A bunch of nugs. That means a boof in the head. Yes, I know, yeah, nugs being weed, yes. I get it. I did watch Jordan Peterson. At some point I could smell the stink, whatever it is. After that, stopped watching. So I've always done. Yeah, so that's Jordan Peterson's grift. Now, a lot of people start on the Jordan Peterson pipeline by someone who seems powerful. He seems to really know what he's talking about. He's using big words. He seems very certain and in control. And there's something authoritarian, like some authority. He speaks from authority. He seems to be an expert. He claims to be an expert on climate science, an expert on mythology, an expert on, wasn't he a lecturer of psychology and stuff? Wow. And then those who are less tied to this kind of pathologos group thinking, clan thinking, and can think for themselves, start to realize, oh, actually, he's just lying. He's just a right-wing grifter like all of the other ones. He's presenting a certain way of being that he is imitating that appears to be certain, powerful, and in control, that a lot of people who have a similar kind of upbringing will believe, and then buy his course. That's the right-wing grift. But he's talking nonsense. There's no understanding. There's no philosophy. There's no midwifery. And even his physical arguments about the physical world are stupid and used to justify sexism and racism and hierarchies that justify some people being poor and suffering so that half a dozen billionaires can have 15 yachts and own all the companies for no reason. That's stupid, fascist, grifting nonsense. Okay, yeah, and other people have a bit of that smell. Yep, I'm with you there. Like once I got to know that they lost whatever had that thing and had to leave. Oh, good for you. He was acting as a shoemaker, a paver and a mechanist, and a money lover. And even his stuff about lobsters didn't make sense. Yeah. Again, just cherry picking arguments to support the beliefs he is carrying that he doesn't even suspect he carries, because this appeal to plain knowing is working for him at the moment. So why go through the work of learning? Like the Mino. Like midwifery. Okay, let's keep reading. They came out, okay. So accepted within a clan, right? When these most significant to us came out with such a sense of reality and knowing, we believed, because to reject that as false would have been equivalent to rejecting their most fundamental way of appearing to us as caring knowers. We've tied this to be a caring knower or love within a family. We knew nothing other than the world of our youth. We had nothing to contrast. Well, that idea of love isn't in the text yet, but it's just a way of putting it together. Caring knowers, that's what we're rejecting. A way of being in a clan. Powerful, certain, and in control. Caring knower, that's all that we reject. If we reject this little cosplay charade, song and dance, dog and pony show they're putting on so they can get the jollies of pretending to be knowing. Okay, we knew nothing about the world when we were babies. We had nothing to contrast it with. So it's often a memorable moment the first time we sleep over at a friend's house and we realize that the world that we knew of our household, the way it smelled, the way we talked, our feelings, our sense of the world is different when I go to sleep at my friend's house, on a sleepover. Their house smells differently, the parents talk differently, their worldview is different. I didn't even realize that there could be a difference. We didn't know this as a baby. If it would be possible to reject that appearance, the child would have been stripped of this status of authority from the parents, equally threaten their old roles, and even the very need for a parent role would be diminished. That's how they're being, and it's actually causing our problems. Do I need them? Or this kind of role, is that needed? Maybe there's a better way of being. Maybe it's philosophy. The loss of that relationship the only one we know, and we have attached all these high beings, high words to the very words we actually seek in philosophy, which is why we need to be removing what's false while learning what's true. Midwifery and philosophy together. They go together. They're cohorts or complementary, right? We don't know about philosophy yet, so there's a lot to lose by challenging their bullshit. The loss of that relationship is easier to endure later in life. Once you grow up and you realize everyone's pretending to know and no one knows anything. Ain't no one doing midwifery. Ain't no one reading the Balboa translation, and this part of history anyway. Everyone's pretending. Everyone's stuck in their problems. No one's united under understanding yet. We all understand that when you break your computer, you take it to the guy who has understanding. You take it to the computer shop. When your toaster breaks, you know you need to understand it. Ain't no need for belief. Anyone can fix your toaster if they have understanding. Doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman or a Jew or a Palestinian. But for some reason, as babies, we think we need this authoritarian oppression, tyranny thing. But as you grow up, you realize, while we realize everything else needs understanding, everyone's running around pretending they know stuff they don't. Like, what are we here for? What are we doing here? Where are we going? You gotta know what we're doing. You gotta know where we're going and where we came from to figure out what we're supposed to be doing here. Why are we not addressing that? Why do we still allow capitalism and wealth inequality and military inequality and the genocide that's happening right now? Why is that being allowed to happen? That's stupid. It's stupid. Because the world's full of stupid people, and the people who seek power are the most stupid, who are most attached to this authoritarian way of being. They seek control over others. They are the most ignorant. Why do we have a system that lets the most ignorant gain? That's politics. Politics is a game where the most ignorant, the most addicted to this, seek. That's stupid. It's the exact opposite. As Socrates says many times, it's the people who don't want to rule should be ruling. Why don't they want to rule? Because they're not interested in this bollocks power over others to play out their immaturity and irrationality. There is something much better, truth, or dwelling in the isles of the blessed, knowing true reality and self. Why would you be concerned with bombing other people or exploiting other people or destroying the environment just so you can have a few extra bucks, when you know that there is eternity that you can experience and know, and it's bliss and it's beauty itself and it's real? Of course you wouldn't. That's why we need to make them, says Socrates and Plato in the Republic, because they're the only one who has gone through this, freeing themselves of what's false, and gone through the other side A, understanding as a gateway to experiencing actual self and reality, so they have the paradigm needed to actually benefit, to usher the rest of us into doing that very thing. They've done the thing we're all here to do, so they should be the ones helping, guiding, even though they don't want to. Why? Because they've done it. They've got the paradigm. They've got the understanding. Just like, why do you take your broken laptop to the computer store? Because they've got the understanding. They've done it. They've fixed computers. They've gone to college. So why don't we apply it to knowing of self and reality and how to live in the world? How to relate to each other and ourselves? Even though we do it to toasters and laptops? Because of this! Isn't that tragic? Yes. I mean, no, it's not tragic. If all of these problems are so stupid that we can fix a computer and laptop, but we're not applying it to spirituality, politics, and parenting, and all of the problems we face as a species and within our soul, that's so hilariously dumb. You think your toaster is more important than your soul? You think your laptop is more important than the human race and genocide and war and the planet we live on? That's so stupid. You're like a baby trying to eat its custard by smearing it on its face. Why are we so immature in relation to those most important things? This scene we are imitating. Why didn't we challenge it? Because it would have been a severe crisis to an immature child who only knows this. Because all of these words are not applied to truth and reality, it's applied to this imitation. Isn't that tragic? No. If that's the cause of all of our problems, individually as a developing soul in the game of philosophy and as a species, if this is the cause of it, then just do midwifery, you dope. If your toaster isn't making toast because it's not plugged in and you need electricity to power the toaster, then just plug it in. If you can only get the sustenance from the custard when you're a little baby in your high chair, and you only get it by putting the custard into your mouth, then just put it in your mouth, you dumb baby. It's hilarious when you don't. So, can we see this, what we've been reading and reviewing today, with such obviousness that we can see it analogically in other things like toasters and laptops? The more obvious you see it, the more fun you can have talking about it. The more fun you can have applying the same relationship to other things like toasters. The more fun you can have making analogies when it's obvious and clear. Can we see this with such clarity that the cause of our spiritual and political problems are so obviously caused by this pathologos origin scene that all humans get for a good reason? Can that be seen by us in this channel, by this reading and reviewing, with this level of specificity and refinement of the reading, such that what seems tragic to everyone else is funny to us? Because if it's so obviously seen that our problems are caused by our pathologos, then it's obvious that we all should be doing midwifery on every level, especially at Parliament House every single day, especially at school every single day, especially at Amazon every single day, at your place of work. Obviously, if you need to eat food, obviously you got to put it in your mouth every day you eat. If you don't, and you walk around, you're losing weight and you're suffering because you keep putting your sandwiches in your ear, that would be hilarious to you. Because it's so obvious. Because it makes sense, and it's so obvious to you because of your understanding. And not only is it obvious, it's easily fixable. You are not Buddha stuck in your suffering, Buddha. You are not co-worker who puts all his tuna sandwiches in his ears, gonna starve to death. You dope. Why? Because it's obvious, and you can obviously point out, hey, by the way, if the cause of your starvation is you're putting your tuna sandwiches in your ear, but you need to eat by putting stuff in your mouth, then just put it in your mouth. If the cause of our suffering, Buddha, if the cause of our human problems, if the cause of our spiritual and political division is nothing other than this, the pathologos origin scene that we all get and we all must get because we have to develop the dialectic, then do the dialectic, you dope. Don't put the tuna sandwich in your ear. Don't genocide Palestinians, you dope. Don't support capitalism or fascism or propaganda, you dope. Don't pollute the environment for the profits of half a dozen shareholders overseas, you dope. Just do the dialectic on our problems. Just do midwifery. Isn't it hilarious? Buddha? Capitalists? Fascists? Zionists? Isn't it obvious? Is it funny? Is it hilarious if we don't do it? Because it's so obvious and because it's such an easy change to make? What's the change? Doing philosophical midwifery. How often? All the time. And especially every day or every second day on this channel. So on that note, tune in to the next one. Because it would be obvious to do, and it would be hilarious if you don't. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for joining me in chat. Thank you for your comments and for participating in chat. If you want to join, you can join on Twitch. You can subscribe on YouTube and chat with us live in real time. You can join the Discord to continue the relationship and the journey with fellow adventurers. And hey, let's have fun playing the best and maybe only game in town. Thank you for joining me again, and I will see you next time.